When I started to work here, after I've studied economics and MBA, and I started to work in a big multinational bank, and I thought that was really something amazing. But it wasn't exactly what I had hoped for. And
amazing, but not that amazing.
Not that amazing. In fact, it was a huge disappointment because I actually didn't feel that I could contribute so much. I felt kind of in a straitjacket. And but the problem was when my identity at that time, I think, was also linked to it, because it was a time, you're introduced to people and they will say, oh, meet my friend Kristin, she's at JP Morgan. And then I moved to another bank, Citibank. And here's Kristin, she's at Citibank, here's so-and-so, she's at Procter & Gamble, here's, it's all fantastic. And but I felt quite miserable for a long time, and I read a book by Dr. Estes. My aunt gave it to me. It's called Women Who Run with Wolves. So I was in my late 20s at the time, and I was reading this story on the ugly duckling. Because Dr. Estes, if you haven't read the book, Women Who Run with Wolves, she analyzes stories, and she was analyzing the ugly duckling. And I got this realization that here I am, I have the right skills, I have the right knowledge, but somehow I'm feeling out of place. And so I realized I'm like this ugly duckling that could be a swan somewhere else. And I quit. And it was very scary because I didn't really know what to do and where to go at the time. But somehow I suddenly found a consulting job with the Norwegian Chamber of Commerce in Milan. Then another friend told me they needed people to teach marketing in Bulgaria. And off I went. Met Lorella Zanardo there. I met a lot of people that have been instrumental in creating WIN. And I started to think about WIN. And I started to think about women. I was very involved also in a women's association in Milano. So this seed was planted. And I think that's chapter 2 somehow. The day when I realized that even just Kristin Engvig, without Citibank, JP Morgan, or Bocconi, MBA, or whatever, I could start something. But it was very, very scary. But I think that was the next chapter, starting that. And I think that happens to many of us when we start our projects. It's more than just a project. It's like a journey, because we embark on something. We don't know where it's going to go and what's going to happen, but with this kind of commitment. So that was my sort of chapter 2, yes. Embarking on somewhere, something. I didn't know what could become. Then that has grown, and suddenly that idea took shape and became sort of form in collaboration, in the listening with so many other women, but also in a listening inside of me. So this is, I think, this big chapter of outer and inner listening, doing something I'm passionate about, but also listening to the women and making sure that what I'm doing is also engaging with the passion of a lot of other people. And a lot of learning and a lot of things on the way. And somehow now I think there's a new chapter emerging.
Beautiful. Thank you. Just as you were speaking, I was also thinking about the mosaic of life, and how there's one of my favorite quotes by Rumi is where he says, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the same self-well from which your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the same self-well from which your joy rises was once filled with your own tears." And I have a sense, too, that you're looking at the whole in terms of the mosaic of life. And the mosaic of life has many different pieces, and there's whole dreams and there's shattered dreams, but it all comes together in a tapestry. Yeah. And I'm wondering if there are times in your life where, as you look back, you see that there were pieces that didn't fit, but then fit in? That's like the chapter. But also, if there are particular times that you see as being a cornerstone in the mosaic, that could either be of joy or of sadness, but is part of that mosaic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting, and I think what came to my mind right now is that sometimes what is our strength is also our weakness, and our joy can be the same part of the same thing. And I think one of the things, my joy of life is also that of my generosity. Let's say my wish to be with the people, my wish to create a world, and it is also what sometimes causes me problems too, because it is that I overdo things, or there are so many amazing things, but it's also things when you think about it, when you go back and I say, okay, I lose an identity, let's say a corporate identity, or in your private life, maybe losing identities in relationships and so on, and suddenly then at a later stage you realize, wow, it's all perfect, because if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't do what I do today, and I wouldn't be who I am today. And it's also very clear when I see difficulties through life, through traveling, through meeting people with extremely different cultures, trying to work together, trying to live together. And those difficulties make me, and I think it happens to all of you, make us understand other people so much deeper. So we should treasure the sorrows as long as we can get obviously out of that. But there is something there that I totally understand so well. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I'm remembering also, yesterday there was a fantastic talk on also the heroic journey.
Yeah.
And looking at the heroic journey, which all of us are on. And in looking at it, there's, these aren't exactly the steps, maybe, that were mentioned, but sort of the call to adventure, and then deciding whether to move forward in the call or whether to step back. And then, after you decide, I'm going to move forward with the call, deciding that, yes, I'll take the call. But even in that period, there's something called chaos before creation, which you can get depressed, it can be very challenging, a lot of things can happen. And only after going through that stage of chaos before creation do you create and then bring the gift home.
Yeah.
So a theologian, Paul Tillich, talks about the courage to be. And what he says is, there's many different ways of defining courage.
Yeah.
But the way that he defines courage is the courage to have joy, not only when things are going well, but also to have joy despite what is happening.
Yeah.
And he describes this as having a sense of radical self-affirmation. And I'm wondering if you have some words of thoughts and inspiration for us of maybe times in your life where things are going great, and then times where you've had to have radical self-affirmation to stand where you are and know who you are, despite what the world is saying, to really create your dreams and your passion and things into reality.
Yeah. But it is crucial what you're saying. I think for all of you, and certainly in my life, and I've embarked on something like the WIN conference, you go out there 18 years ago when there wasn't so much talk about diversity, there wasn't so much talk about inclusion. We had to do the conference on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I looked very young, a round face, and people thought I was 10 years younger than I was. Nobody heard. That it was very difficult. And I used to bring with me a colleague who was quite a lot older than me when we went to sponsor meetings to talk and so on and so forth. But there were also many things that had happened on this journey. I remember once we had a venue for the conference that I got for free, sponsored, but it burned down a few weeks before. It literally burned down. And I remember I went to the dean of Bocconi Business School, and he gave me the money for another venue. But there have been so many things like that, money pulling out just weeks before the event, many, many challenges that have really tested in some ways also, the commitment. No money, having to not eat meat because I'm a vegetarian, because there was nothing there, because we had to. But the cause has sort of made me stay on track. And I think in the beginning I wanted to prove, in the beginning, the early days, I want to prove I can do that. But then you go beyond that, and it's sort of, you're dedicated somehow, and then you go on. And then it's and I think that the reason why you go on is because of the joy, because you see people around you grow. And I started off as a very shy person, very insecure in many ways. And I often speak to women and say, oh, I can't do it, I don't have the confidence. But you do gain confidence, I couldn't sit here with you like this 18 years ago. But you go on, you go out, you get your experience, you get your training. Of course, it's not easy, but you don't even think about that. It's about what you're doing and about creating the possibilities. And sometimes you cry, sometimes it's difficult, but you just move on. But it is a lot of work, and I think many people, like we saw yesterday too, the minister here is just so amazing, but it's a lot of people are against her, and you just have to like that. So.
Great, thank you. So I have so many questions. I see we have 4 minutes and 30 seconds, so I'm going to ask them all quickly.
Yeah.
The next one is a bigger question, but actually you can answer it really quickly. Which is, Viktor Frankl says at one point, it's not for us to ask what is the meaning of life, but for us to be prepared when life comes to us at the end of life and says, what meaning have you given to me? So like I said, very easy question about the meaning of life.
Yeah.
Maybe, though, I know that this is looking at, the answer of what meaning have you given to me is also about spirituality and the time to reflect or the time to have that space in your life. Yeah. And I'm hoping that you can maybe share one thing with us in your life that is keeps you grounded.
Yeah, I think that's
or allows you to
extremely important question. And thank you, Karen. I am more or less parallel as I started WIN. I engaged in some training on creativity. I've been studying acting and the Zen arts. And a lot of the work there is on sort of emptiness, becoming an empty vessel to receive. And it has sort of accompanied me during the work on WIN to actually really create. So create moments, create events, create relationship, create my life. And also, at the second WIN conference, one of the speakers recommended a book to me. It's called, and I recommend it to all of you. It's called The Artist's Way by Julian Cameron. And she says, every morning when you wake up, write. And I began doing that. I think I did that for many, many years, through divorces, through moving countries, and that helped me. You can, in addition to being still and meditating and allowing to receive things, but also writing. I think it's a very simple and extremely efficient tool. And then you have this time with you. You become on a journey. So this is how you can go through storms and waves and different weather, but you are on that journey with yourself in your writing or in your stillness or whatever tool you want to have. And it helps you get rid of things so we can be this empty vessel to receive more, so we can create faster and more for each other. So it's certainly very, very important. We can't create the future unless we have some sort of reflective time and reflection possibility to. Otherwise, we get stuck in the past.
Yes, don't want to be stuck.
Not where we want to be. Yeah.
Thank you. What I see you as someone, I know you too, so not just at WIN, but I see you as someone who has so much joy in your life, really a lot of joy, and just moving through life. And Noah, my son, his godfather who passed away, used to say, to be happy in life, love what you have. And to be unhappy in life, want what you don't have. But it's a sense of I have a sense of your gratefulness in life. And is there something that you're particularly grateful for, or do you have a sense of some words of thought and inspiration about the role of gratefulness in our life?
I feel very grateful right now being with all the women. But besides that, actually, it's a practice almost to be grateful. As a young woman, I was very conscious about my body. I didn't accept myself. I think once we start really accepting who we are and being grateful for that, we immediately have much more access time as well. So, but gratefulness is hugely important, and for some of us, I think it comes kind of natural. Maybe it's our upbringing, but even for the most grateful, optimistic person, it's important to take a moment and just enjoy and be grateful about where we are. And I'm also convinced that it is in those moments we create more of it also. And now we are talking about financial crisis, we are talking about all that, and I think in these moments too, we can create abundance, from our gratefulness, and it can be grateful for this beautiful rose and
That's great.
And Karen's dress that's matching, and whatever it is, we can be light about it. But it is a gift to be here, and I'm grateful. So.
Great. Well, thank you for complimenting my matching dress. My last question is about a rose. I'll end it with a rose. But first I'll talk about a tree. So Thomas Merton says, a tree gives glory to God by being a tree, just a tree. Yeah. And Emerson said, a rose stands beautiful by itself. And a rose doesn't compare itself to other roses and say, oh, that rose is more beautiful than I am. A rose is beautiful and has joy in being itself, being a rose. And this is actually something that I think is so amazing about the energy of WIN in how you've created it, that there is really a sense of women coming together to support each other, to stand as roses, to do what they, and you've created this amazing garden of flowers and roses, and I'm hoping that you can end with telling us a little bit about your inspiration and ability to make this happen.
I think that is a great question, and I think one of the things that is so crucial is in all of our work and life in general. So is our team around us too. Here we have a fantastic team here at WIN that's working, and our focus is really on creating a garden for all of us to flourish. And if we can get enough out of ourselves to always think about creating gardens where a variety of flowers can grow, we can really do. And I think that is what makes the magic. That's what creates the atmosphere. And there is also almost a fragrance to it if you are sensitive enough. And so there is a lot to enjoy about that. But we do have teams. We are gardeners. It's not only about ourselves. And in that, we grow too. So
Thank you. Thank you, Kristin. Thank you, Kristin, for words of wisdom and love from Kristin. Thank you.